is a good God. But once we get into these situations, they don't dictate. You see, our experiences should not dictate who God is. The world should dictate who God is. Because we may go through some tough times, some difficult times, and based on that, we may want to say, this is the kind of God we are serving. He don't care about me. He don't love me. But we have to always remember those experiences are there to help us grow and to become more of what God wants us to become. They don't dictate the type of God we have. When we look into the Word, it tells us the type of God we have. And so we need to understand who He is and how He loves and cares for us and how He even gave His life for us. And He provides everything we need. We need to have all of that understanding before we get into terrible, tough, difficult times. Because once we get into those times, we are able to say, I will have confidence in this God of mine because I know Him. And not only that I know Him, that He knows me. And so Joseph here, as I said last time, he took his focus from himself. Because all the while he was thinking about himself, favorite, nice coat, he had the dreams, everybody bowing down to him. It was all about him. But all of a sudden, now that he was in Potiphar's house, the Bible said God was with him and everything he touched prospered. And when Potiphar's wife came after him, Joseph said something that is so important to make us understand that his focus was not on himself. His focus was not on Potiphar. See, he said, when she asked him to come to bed with her, he said, how can I do this wickedness and sin against my God? Not sin against Potiphar, but against his God. So it tells us that his focus was no longer on himself. His focus was not on him being a slave. It was not about Potiphar, but his focus was on God. My focus determines my feelings to a great extent. And so Joseph had that revelation, and he lived it, as we see, when he refused to go to bed with her. But the thing is, even though Joseph made the right decision, and this is something we always have to know. That's why knowing who God is in your life is more important than waiting till something happens then to determine who God is. So even though Joseph did the right thing, he had a situation perpetrated on him that didn't look good. Instead of him being elevated, he was demoted. So he's a slave, and now he's in prison. But the Bible said God was with him. So he was with him in the house, and now he's with him in the prison. This is awesome to think about God. And Joseph knew it. And God being with Joseph, Joseph was given command of everything in the prison. The warden, the chief warden, just left it up to Joseph. How is this happening? Simply because God was with Joseph, that's one. And two, Joseph's focus was on his God. So whatever and wherever he ended up, he trusted his God to guide him. Now don't miss this. We trust God, but sometimes we try to work things out also on our own. Sometimes we realize this is a little difficult, so we try to ask for help. But it doesn't mean we don't trust God. And so it's important for us to understand that. And tonight I want to just talk about not considered once more. Not considered once more. With his brothers, he was not considered at all. They hated him. As a matter of fact, they wanted to kill him. They put him in the system. And the objective was to destroy him. Reuben tried to save his life. But Judah decided we need to make some money off of him. Why kill him? He's our brother. Let's get some money off his life. And that's how they sold him the Ishmaelites, and he got down to Potiphar. And now Potiphar, as we said last night in our discussion, somehow we believe Potiphar didn't believe his wife. Joseph should have been a dead man. But Potiphar put him in prison. And we believe somewhere along, the Bible didn't say it, but somewhere along the line we believe Potiphar had some doubt. This is the kind of guy that's working for me. Look what he's doing. Look how he's prospering, causing all these things to prosper. Whichever God he's serving is really doing an awesome job in his life. And now the wife is saying something negative about him. And instead of killing him, he put him in prison. So once in prison, as I said, the warden gave him permission again. Why? Because God was with Joseph. In control in the prison. In prison, a place I would rather not be. Even though he was in control, it's a place he'd rather not be. And when we look at this chapter 40, we see that two of his companions, these two people who worked directly with the king, King Pharaoh, they were placed under Joseph's control. It was the cupbearer, the chief cupbearer to Pharaoh, and the chief baker of the king of Egypt. Joseph had class people that he was looking over. He had people who were big shots, so to speak, who worked directly with the king, who worked directly for the king, that was placed under his care. And Joseph, the warden, had no concern about any of the prisoners. Well, how did they get there? Well, they didn't offend Potiphar, they offended the king. And Joseph was they were placed under Joseph's care. In Genesis 40 and verses 1 to 4, this is what it says. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master with his two officials. But let me go back and read and let you know what the king was. Okay. The king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Verse 2, Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. Now, whenever you see statements like that, you know something is about to happen. God don't just put statements in there just to write more stuff. There's a message that he's sending us, and it's helping us to recognize something is coming up. So here it is. They said, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. That had to do with something God was about to do. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. That was verse 4. Now, when we look at this now, we are seeing something that's about to take place. As I said, don't take the statements lightly. It's a statement that shouldn't even be there. Why are you put in the same prison with Joseph? That has nothing to do with anything. They were placed in prison. But when they said that, it highlighted something important that God was about to do, and God was about to bring about, that a future would be dependent on it. Yeah. And this is so important to see. After they had been in custody for some time, verse 5, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream. No, don't miss it now. This is coming together now while they were in the same prison with Joseph. This is so powerful. The same night, they had a dream the same night. And each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph, that's verse 6, came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why are your faces so sad today?" Why are your faces so sad today? And we can look at this and see Joseph had two dreams. While both of them, the cupbearer and the baker, had one dream of their own. So, what I want us to truly understand here is to recognize something. Joseph looked at them and saw that they were dejected. And instead of Joseph passing them straight, because he's in the same predicament with them, even though he is in charge in the prison, he's in the same predicament. He's in prison. And he didn't do anything wrong. But watch this. Get this. Every moment that you live, that I live, is precious. It's God's gift to us. Let us learn to live in it. Why? Because it's the only moment we have. Every moment is precious. Joseph didn't take it for granted. When he came into work that morning, he saw their faces. And immediately, that instant, that moment, Joseph spoke with them. Because every moment that you live, that I live, is precious. And whatever we can do for God, in every moment that we live, let's do it. See, we don't get these moments again. They come, and when we don't use them, they keep going. When we use them, they are registered as something great and something that someone will remember later on because of the good, kind deeds that we have done. Every moment. Let's enjoy living these moments. And I looked here at Joseph and saw Joseph, even though he was in prison, even though he didn't do anything wrong, but he ended up there, even though all of that was against him, yet Joseph lived every moment to the fullest. And whatever he could have done in every moment, he was willing to do. So he looked at them and he asked them that question. And they began to talk to him about their situation. Remember, they had a dream each. Joseph had two dreams up front. But Joseph never allowed his two dreams to overshadow the dreams that each one had. You know, he could have said, "Well, I had two dreams too, and I ended up in trouble. I mean, why do you want me to help you all?" No. He had two dreams. That was about God. And God will take care of that. He ended up in Egypt. He ended up in Potiphar's house. Now he ended up in the prison house. And he is using every moment that God has given. And that's why I said your focus will determine your feelings. And we need to remember when we find ourselves in situations that are not as pleasant as they could be, our focus needs always to be on our God. Because our God is able to do immeasurably more than we could ever think or even ask. So we need to trust our God. We need to have confidence in our God when we get in these situations. And when we do that, we will see the needs that others have and we'll be able to attend to their needs because our focus is not on ourselves, but our focus is on our God. So important for us to remember that. Your immediate goals will determine the changing worth of everything around you. Your immediate goals will determine the changing worth of everything around you. Joseph's immediate goal was to take care of the prisoners in the prison. And going after these two to help them based on how they looked was the most important thing to him at that time. This was worth so much because of his immediate goals. And sometimes we don't even have an immediate goal. Sometimes we just live life. We have to always remember that we have to have a goals to work on, because God has given us that. And Joseph's goal was to take care of the prisoners. That was his immediate goal. And as he came in and he saw what he saw, it was valuable to him. He knew immediately what he needed to do. And he went after them to help them go through what they were dealing with. And in chapter 40, verses 6 and 7, while Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. 7. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, why are your faces so sad today? And they said, we both had dreams, they answered, but there is no one to interpret them. That's what they thought. Yeah. They explained the fact that we had dreams, and it's so confusing because the dreams seem so real. But guess what? There's no one to interpret them for us. And Joseph said some things. That's why I keep saying Joseph's focus has shifted from himself, from his condition, from his situation, to a God that he loved and who loved him, a God who was with him. Joseph answered them. When they said, we both had dreams, they answered, but there is no one to interpret them. Then Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dream. No, watch it. He said interpretations belong to God. He didn't say tell God your dreams. He said tell me. Because Joseph had confidence that God hears him. And God is able to give him the interpretation of the dream. He had that confidence. He was in prison, but he was not in prison, so to speak. Because his focus was on his God, who is able. And Joseph said, just go ahead and tell me the dream, because interpretations belong to God. See, what is strange here is, he said, does interpretations belong to God? Tell me a dream. No, that didn't seem right. If interpretation belonged to God, tell God your dream. But Joseph said, tell me, which suggests that Joseph was totally in touch with his God. And he believed by faith that God would answer him with the interpretation for the dreams of these two people. In verse 9, so the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, in my dream, I saw a vine in front of me. 10. And on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its cluster ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand. Verse 12. This is what it means, Joseph said to him. So here it is. He's given him the dream, and Joseph now is given the interpretation. And this is so powerful because Joseph is depending on God. And as he's hearing the dream, God is giving him the interpretation immediately. The Bible said when he was in Potiphar's house, God was with Joseph. And when he ended up in prison, the Bible says God was with Joseph. So there's no reason why he has to wait any length of time for the interpretation. Why? Because God was with him. Verse 12, this is what it means. Joseph said to him, the 3 branches are 3 days. 13, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But you know, this is so powerful. To get a dream and have it interpreted in your favor. It is such an exciting moment for the cupbearer. Such an exciting moment. Could you imagine having to wait 3 days? In 3 days, I can imagine the cupbearer couldn't contain himself. Because he knew he was not going to die, but he knew he was going to be restored to his rightful position. Whatever he had done, Pharaoh had already excused him for it. He had already forgiven him for it. And now in 3 days, he'll be back in his position. I could imagine the excitement that this cupbearer had. But here is a problem that we face. As I said earlier on, we trust God. We depend on God. Sometimes we go right back to our human existence. And we go back to our human thinking. And Joseph couldn't help it. See, the cupbearer was going back in Pharaoh's favor. And so if he's in Pharaoh's favor, he can speak to Pharaoh for me. There's a possibility that that can happen. So Joseph made every effort to make sure the cupbearer understood that. I interpreted the dream. God gave me the interpretation. Now you're going back to Pharaoh. Say a word for me. Say a word on my behalf. Sometimes it's hard. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard for us not to say it. In verse 14, but when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. So here he's saying, hey, remember me. Say a word for me. Say a word on my behalf. I was forcibly taken from the land of the Hebrews, and here I'm placed in a dungeon. I didn't do anything wrong. Speak on my behalf. Because he's speaking to the most powerful man in the world, Pharaoh, the king. Verse 16. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, I too had a dream. You see, he is looking for the similar outcome. And so he said, I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. And in verse 18 is what it says. This is what it means, Joseph said. The 3 baskets are 3 days. So they both started out the same way. Both of them were 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh would lift off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh. So that totally opposite to the cupbearer, who was rejoicing for the 3 days and couldn't wait for the 3 days to come. Now the chief baker, I can imagine the pain and the suffering, anticipated grief he was going through. I am going to die. When you know you're going to die, at a particular time, that has to be an excruciating, painful situation for you. Not that you are sick and you may die, but you know you're going to die in 3 days. This is what's going to happen to you, and in 3 you are going to be dead. How do we live those 3 days? As people of God, how do we live those? And that's why I say today to all of us, let us not live our lives. Don't live your whole life waiting for someday. You know, someday when I have money, someday when I get married, someday when I have my degree, someday when I buy a house, someday when I... Let's not live our lives for someday. Let's live every moment today. Someday will never come sometimes. And when we talk about someday, we are putting off what we can do today and hoping that someday will show up when we can do it. No, 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 no. Do it today. Live today. As I said earlier, live every moment. Let's not live or wait for someday, because someday sometimes never comes. I remember, that's a quick thing, I laugh at myself with this. Before I got married, I met my wife in New York. I said to her, she said, oh, no, we need to get married because I'm not dating nobody for no long period of time. And I said, well, I don't have a proper job right now. I don't have a lot of money. I have to wait for some time when I get... She said, I am not waiting for no someday. You don't have to have all the money in the world. We can work together to make it work. And I had a laugh at that, and I said, okay, all right, you make sense there. Someday normally never comes. Because when you have $10, you say, I gotta wait and I get somebody. You have $20, you say, that's not enough. You get 30. You keep waiting for someday when you have so much, and that someday never shows up. Live every moment of every day that God has given you. Don't wait for someday. So here we see he was going to be killed. Now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday. This is verse 20. His birthday. And he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hung the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. So we see that the dream that Joseph interpreted, God gave him wisdom to do it. See, God is preparing. First of all, they were placed in the same prison, and it said that in the word, not by accident. So now here comes their dream, and Joseph was clear with them because God used him to interpret the dream. Because God is preparing him for something later. God knows what's going to be happening around the corner. And so God is preparing Joseph, even in the prison, to be in charge or to take care of. Remember, he was in charge in Potiphar's house. He was in charge in the prison house. And now we're watching God work with him. Every situation, prosperity took place. And so it happened as word said, exactly as Joseph said. But in verse 23, this is the sad part. The chief cupbearer, after being restored to his position, after having Joseph ask for favor, the Bible said, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Once again, forgotten by those he cared for. And as Sister Mama Mary said last night, the brothers wanted to put Joseph out of commission and remove every remembrance of him. That was such a powerful statement. And we need to remember what they were doing. Forgotten by those he cared for. Forgotten by the family. And now forgotten again by the chief cupbearer. And so Joseph had to manage his mind. In other words, he had to keep his focus where it ought to be. He had to come to terms and realize that not everybody is on your side. Not everybody going to remember you. Not everybody going to grant you favor. And when we get that in our minds, we manage our minds. When we can manage our minds, you can manage your life. When you lose control of your mind, you lose control of your life. And Joseph had now to manage his mindset in order for him to continue to enjoy his life. He forgot him. But Joseph couldn't focus on him forgetting him. He had to continue to live every day to the fullest. Why? Because God was with him. And not only that, what was God asking him to do again? So his focus had to be really riveted on God, because in the prison, there was work for him to do. The example he had to set, the people he had to bless, the God he had to represent, all of it, even while he's in prison. So this is something important for us to get. I think we talked about it some time ago. To get to anywhere or to anything, you will go through something. I want to say it again. To get to anywhere or to anything, you will go through something. And Joseph is here. God is leading him to somewhere, to something. But in order to get there, Joseph has to go through something. And as we continue this course, we will see how God is turning things around and putting people in place to get Joseph where he needs to be. There's no way we would put Joseph in prison. But guess what? In prison, 2 dreams he interpreted and interpreted them correctly. Oh yes, the cupbearer forgot him. But God had him in prison for a particular purpose. And we look at God had him in Potiphar's house for a particular purpose. And we'll say, well, why would God allow him to go to prison? Because in prison, he had him there for a particular purpose. He doesn't do things just to do things. Whatever God allows in my life, in your life, whatever he brings about in our lives, is because of a particular purpose he's trying to complete here on earth, and he's using us to bring it about. So, Father, thank you. Even though we may not fully understand what you're doing, even though we may not fully agree with what you are doing, help us to continue to trust you. Help us to continue to place our confidence in you, because we know, dear Lord, that you know everything from the end to the beginning. And our desire should be, and our purpose should be, to trust you even when we cannot trace you. Our understanding cannot fathom your working in our lives. But we know, dear Lord, you're always doing what is necessary to help us overcome and to achieve those things that will bring honor and glory to your name. So thank you for the message and the story here and the lesson that we are learning here from the life of Joseph. Understanding, dear Lord, that sometimes we get a little tired and we may ask man for favor, but you're not ready to give us that just yet. And so may we continue to have place our confidence in you. Even when man seems to fail us, help us to trust you, because you will never, ever fail us. Thank you again for being with us this evening, this morning, and thank you for giving us a true understanding of your love for us. Bless each one of us, those who are going through any situation, financial, relational, grief, any kind of illness. I give you thanks and praise for how you're working in their lives and the healing and deliverance you're bringing about in their lives. Thank you so much for hearing us. And thank you so much for blessing us this evening and this morning, I pray, in your Son's holy name. Amen and amen.
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 Amen.